Chapter 10, page 63. Logan could hardly contain himself. He shifted his weight from side to side and had to concentrate on keeping his feet on the floor and not jumping up and down. He and his parents stood by Miles and his parents, who stood next to Philip, who had worn a tie for the occasion. Only a handful of others would be the first to see the harmonica candy come down the belt. The head candy makers from each room were there, including Fran from the taffy room, Avery from the tropical room, Paulo from the bee room, and of course, Steve and Lenny. Sabrina, the head of advertising, and 3 other suits from the sales and marketing teams ran in just as Max pressed the button to start the machine. He'd offered to let Philip do the job, but Philip had declined. The gears began to move, and a cheer went up from the small crowd. Outside, hundreds of employees and guests were waiting on the great lawn for the kickoff to officially begin. The crowd included the judges from the candy-making contest, who always got to celebrate the newest winner. They would also be presenting Philip with his winning plaque, just like the ones in the front lobby of the factory. The candy maker had bought everyone plastic harmonicas to practice with, so the crowd was no doubt keeping busy while they waited. "Here they come!" Miles shouted. He pointed as the first tray of naked harmonica candy slid under the enrober and chocolate cascaded down upon them. He really didn't need to point, as all eyes had been glued on that first tray. A dozen more trays followed right behind it. They'd all be wheeled outside so everyone could try them together. Amid his joy, Logan felt a pang of sadness that Daisy couldn't be there. She loved the enrober even more than he did, and he loved it a lot. They'd all tried to reach her, and no one had heard back. He couldn't imagine wanting to be anywhere other than where he stood right now. But if he were the world's best teenage spy, maybe he wouldn't want to leave his super secret assignment to watch a candy bar being made. Daisy was probably on the other side of the world, rescuing a kidnapped princess or recovering a priceless work of art. The trays moved past them toward the cooling tunnel, where it would take 5 minutes for the harmonica candies to solidify. When the real ones were ready to be packaged for sale in a few weeks, the tray would have a longer journey. After cooling, it would flip over, gently releasing the harmonica candies onto the belt and funneling them, one at a time, into the wrapping machines. At the end of the line, they would drop into a specially made box that would cushion each one so the inner workings of the harmonica didn't get crushed. Each person cheered as the first tray passed in front of them. Philip just wiped away a tear. He didn't even try to hide it. Logan was at the end of the line. When the tray reached him, he cheered like the rest of them. How would they wait until all these cooled before they tasted one? The candy maker's walkie-talkie buzzed, and he stepped away from the group to answer it. The rest of the group watched the clock, counting down the seconds. But when the candy maker returned, his eyebrows were scrunched together. Everyone stopped talking and gathered around him. "What is it?" Logan's mother asked. "Is everything okay?" The candy maker paused. "I hope so. Big Billy from Good is here." "So?" Mrs. Sweet said. "You invited lots of other candy makers, right?" He nodded. "Yes, but he just told the crowd he had an announcement to make after the unveiling of the harmonica candy." "You don't think he changed his mind about letting us produce some of his candy, do you?" Mr. Sweet shook his head. "I hope not. It's his choice, of course. Maybe he thinks we'll be too busy with the harmonica candy to give the time they deserve." "Come now, Richard," Henry said, stepping forward. "Nothing's wrong till something's wrong, right? This is a day of celebration. We'll worry about Big Billy if he gives us something to worry about. You are wise beyond your years, the candy maker said, putting his hand on Henry's shoulder. There ain't much left beyond my years, Henry joked. Logan relaxed. His dad and Henry had been having that exchange for as long as Henry had been handing out advice, which was as long as Logan could remember. The first batch is done, Max announced, transferring the now cooled tray to the bottom shelf of the cart. You can all go join the party, and I'll wheel these out as soon as the rest are cooled off. Logan, Miles, and Philip lagged behind as the others filed out. I'd like to stay, Philip said. I bet your family is anxious to see you, Max said. They're not out there, Philip said, like he didn't care. But Logan wondered whether he really did. It seemed as though Philip was very used to his dad's not coming to things. I'm here, a man's voice said from behind them. They turned around to find Reggie heading into the room. Logan had begun to suspect that Reggie meant more to Philip than just someone who worked for his father. What are you doing here? Philip asked, 2 red patches appearing on his cheeks. I said you didn't need to come. Logan cringed to hear Philip talk to Reggie that way. Reggie held up Philip's violin case. You left this in the car. Philip looked surprised. He mumbled thanks, took a quick peek inside like he was making sure his violin was still in there, and stuck the case in a cabinet. Max's assistants had been busy pulling the finished trays off the belt, and the carts were now full. We're ready to introduce the harmonica candy to the world, Max said. Boys, a little help? Logan and Miles each grabbed a cart and lined up behind Max. Philip got behind the last one, giving Reggie one more wary glance. The bright sunshine was a stark contrast to the last time Logan had stood in that spot outside the back door, only 10 hours before. The shooting stars almost seemed like a dream. Now balloons and banners hung from trees. Boxes of chocolate pizza set piled high on picnic tables, and colorful beach balls flew through the air, chased by laughing kids. It was a beautiful sight, and Logan's heart swelled. The crowd welcomed him and Miles and Philip with cheers and chants of, Harmonica candy! Harmonica candy! They had the honor of handing out a harmonica candy to each person lined up in front of their cart. If some of the people Logan handed them to took a few seconds too long at his hand or arm or face, which some definitely did, he refused to let it bother him. He thought again that it wasn't fair that Daisy had to miss this, even if she was out saving the world somewhere. Philip caught his eye and smiled at him. A real, genuine smile, which was rare for him. Logan smiled back, extra wide. When everyone had a harmonica candy clutched, but not too hard, in his or her hand, the candy maker stood at the podium to make a speech. He gestured for Philip to join him, then spoke about having dreams, about the joy of teamwork and of believing in oneself. Logan knew people were still giving him sideways glances and whispering that he was probably wishing he were standing up there instead of Philip, but he wasn't. He was too excited about taking the first bite of the harmonica candy before it melted. It had been 4 months since he'd last tasted one, and that was 4 months too long. He knew back then that they'd created something special, and it wasn't only that the candy bar played music. Somehow the ingredients had combined to taste so much better than the sum of their parts. He'd always regretted that they hadn't made any extra candy, but they were lucky they'd even had enough for the contest judges. The candy maker handed Philip the microphone. Philip, who was normally anything but shy, seemed at a loss for words as he stared out into the crowd. Finally, he raised the microphone and said, Thank you, everyone, for your support. It's a great honor that wouldn't have been possible without my friends Logan Sweet, Miles O'Leary, and Daisy Carpenter, and all the other wonderful candy makers at Life is Sweet. Logan and Miles gave a wave to the crowd as everyone clapped. Then Philip added, "Now let's see what this thing can do." He quickly moved the harmonica candy up to his lips. Everyone else did the same. He blew into it and moved his fingers over the tiny holes. The notes flew through the air. The crowd immediately joined in. It wasn't as easy for them without having practiced, but soon the great lawn was filled with music. A really bad, not harmonious in any type of music, but it was music out of a candy bar. Logan couldn't wait even one more second. He took a bite, chewed, swallowed, and took another. His heart began to pound. Sweat broke out on his forehead. His hands shook as he took the final bite. Around him, people of all ages cheered and called for more. Logan scanned the crowd for Randall, locating him against a tree, munching away happily. His parents, Max, Philip, Miles, the 3 judges from the contest, everyone he saw was smiling and laughing as they ate the bars. And then his eyes landed on Henry. There must have been 50 people standing between them, but Henry's unusually pale face wore an expression Logan had never seen before. His thick glasses magnified the sadness and worry in his eyes, along with something else Logan couldn't quite identify. It was almost like Henry was looking at something the rest of them couldn't see. This only confirmed what Logan was thinking. There was no denying it. The candy bar was delicious. The dark chocolate took the edge off the milk chocolate base. The caramel was sweet yet salty. The cookie had just the right crispness, and the vanilla complemented the marshmallow perfectly. No doubt they had a winner on their hands. But Logan knew, and clearly Henry knew, that this was not the harmonica candy. This was not the candy bar that had won the Confectionery Association's annual New Candy Contest and had indirectly saved Life is Sweet from being taken over by Philip's father. Something was very wrong.